Number 10, Maker. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Ultimate Universe is awesome. Hulk in this universe is actually quite a bit scarier, at least to me. You know who else is scarier? Reed Richards, the Maker. The Maker is the Reed Richards of the Ultimate Universe, who is evil. He's part of a group of superpowered beings alongside Hulk, Human Torch, Kang, and Quicksilver, who are called the Dark Ultimates. They are essentially villains together, and Hulk and Maker are actually kind of on the same team. Maker actually battles Hulk in a more psychological way, when he calms one of his rampages and convinces him he's being used by S.H.I.E.L.D. After a whole whack of confusing comic booky stuff, the Ultimates all team up and save the day, and then travel the cosmos hunting down the Maker. Number 9. The Leader. It's a great name, honestly. The Leader. Nice. Rightfully so too. This guy is one of the Hulk's oldest rivals. Samuel Stearns was a janitor at a chemical facility where he unfortunately also had an incident involving gamma radiation. Samuel's gamma mutations gained him a super genius level intelligence, along with some telepathy. He also has the gamma ability of self-resurrection. There is actually an instance in Immortal Hulk number 39 in which he physically consumes the intelligence of another man, Brian Banner. But we don't know if this is a normal ability or a kind of mental representation of him consuming another person's knowledge, since he was in the below place at the time. The Leader fights with Bruce on so many different occasions, but the Immortal Hulk story is the one I'm really into right now. You should check it out if you haven't before. Number 8, Maestro. The Maestro is technically Hulk himself, only an alternate version, one who lived through a nuclear apocalypse. He has the intelligence of Bruce, but basically double the strength of Hulk in his base form. He has easily defeated the Hulk several times, and his existence as a possible future version of the Hulk scares the hell out of Bruce himself. He is what would happen if you took the Hulk and made him evil and power hungry and powered him up. In his timeline, he rules over the megacity of Dystopia, where the remnants of humanity live, and he overthrew the former ruler Hercules not through pure strength, but through deception. He is powerful, ruthless, and just a pretty rude dude. Well, here we are. We meet again at the end of the 8th point. You know how great you are? Pretty great. When you gingerly press upon that like and subscribe button, it lets us know that this is the kind of content you like to see. So, thanks for doing that. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook too. You can find a little extra content. Alright, let's carry on, shall we?
Number 7, MORLUN. Not only has MORLUN proven himself to be a formidable foe in various storylines, with him taking on all of the Spider-Verse twice in the Spider-Verse event and Spider-Geddon in the comics, in addition to taking out multiple Spider-Folks / Spider-Totems along the way, but he also went toe-to-toe with Spider-Man in the other. The worst thing / I guess best thing for MORLUN fans about this story is how MORLUN doesn't just ever go for the 1-2 knockout. MORLUN seems to prefer drawing out his victory, teasing his victim if you will, and enjoying Spider-Man's suffering. It's probably because MORLUN's used to winning so much, he's used to devouring Spider-Totems, so he's like, we'll just let this play out. At one point, MORLUN devours Spider-Man's eye in a fight and beats him to within an inch of his life. However, while this definitely feels like a victorious moment for MORLUN and Spider-Man was beat here, he would eventually recover, meaning that MORLUN didn't get a straight victory over Spider-Man. In fact, he'd even heal his eye back. But of course, villainous victories rarely ever get to be permanent, so I think we still need to count this one.
Number 6, Nightmare. A mysterious lord of fear. Nightmare is basically an unstoppable demon capable of capturing the astral form or spirit of a person while they are sleeping. Nightmare has been shown to be capable of subduing 2 Earth demigods, an Eternal, and an Elder God. That's the kind of power we're talking about. But you can solve any problem when you're an impossibly strong green monster made of pure muscle, right? Nightmare manages to capture Hulk's mind and send him on a rampage against Dr. Stephen Strange. Luckily, the good doctor was able to contact Banner inside the Hulk's mind. I don't really know how one does this, but Banner transformed into the Hulk inside the Hulk's mind and fought off Nightmare. They've clashed a few other times, like when he took off Nightmare's head and stole his horse. Again, I don't know how it works, but it is what it is.
Number 5. Green Lantern. There was some interference on this fight, which as you may have guessed by now usually happens with Harley, but regardless, Harley was definitely in the process of winning when the interference really helped her to crush her enemy, who in this case was Green Lantern Hal Jordan. That's right, Harley won in a cosmic arm wrestling match against Hal. In Harley's little black book in issue number 2, the two characters square off when Harley, after being outbid for a genuine Green Lantern ring online, instead gets her hands on something better, a black and red lantern ring. How fitting. It is a combined ring formed from both colors of lanterns. In the end, red and black lantern Harley defeats Hal only to have her ring taken. Hal knocked out and is of course kind of forced to don his Green Lantern ring in order to help save the day. Another fun team up for the books, or the little black book, I suppose I should say.
Number 4. Thanos. Thanos is an interesting one, and we're talking without the Infinity Gauntlet. See, he is exceedingly strong, so much so that he can stand toe to toe with Hulk, at least at Hulk's base strength. Thanos tends to have the advantage in most of their conflicts, using his intelligence and martial skill to take the win more often than not. We see an excellent example of this in the MCU's Infinity War, even if it was a stupid excuse for Hulk not to show up for the rest of the movie. The two of these guys have traded wins pretty evenly, but Thanos has the advantage in my mind. If you have the time, check out the Thanos vs. Hulk 4-part story. It's a cool story involving Annihilus, and it leads right into Thanos the Infinity Relativity, which is also a really fun read.
Number 3. Kingpin. There are a few times that Kingpin has beaten Spider-Man throughout the comics and alternate universes that we have explored. At one point he actually manages to kill MJ in a what-if version of Back in Black, and while Spider-Man manages to hunt him down and even kills him, in the end Kingpin's actions turn Spider-Man into a villain. So I'd still consider that a win for Kingpin. But what I'd really like to focus on here is the time that Kingpin managed to kill Spider-Man in Sony's groundbreaking animated film Into the Spider-Verse, one of my favorite films of all time. Here, Kingpin manages to actually kill Peter Parker, the current Spider-Man of Miles Morales' universe. Although Miles would also learn of alternate universes with their own Spider-Men, Spider-Girls, and even Spider-Pigs. He would also learn of his newfound powers and himself have to protect the city as a new Spider-Man. But still, when it came to the Peter Parker of his reality, Kingpin killed him. He dead. He dead. So dead. Never coming back.
Number 2. Galactus. He's a cosmic being who goes around eating planets, and he thinks he can try to come to Earth and pull that nonsense? We have a Hulk. Earth's dinner menu is no longer available. Oh, just kidding. The Hulk has not won against Galactus, and they've never really had a one-on-one fight. It's safe to say that of all the heroes on Earth, Hulk is maybe one who could make Galactus notice him though. But that's likely as far as it will go. Just like with Surtur, in theory he could win if he got angry enough, but we just haven't had an example of that. And it would have to be quite the insane level of power for Hulk to take the win. Hulk does actually become the Herald of Galactus at one point when he becomes Worldbreaker Hulk in What If World War Hulk, and it is just insane. Number 1. The One Below All. In the Immortal Hulk storyline, Hulk is transported to the Below Place, which is the realm of the One Below All. Now, just to give some context, in Marvel Comics there's a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but it essentially is the equivalent to God, or the Creator. Now we have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics, but this is different. It is like the God of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel at one point, to give you an idea. So the One Below All is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. The One Below All is trapped in the Below Place and manifests in realities through Gamma. Basically, this means that Hulk and the other Gamma mutated beings have fractions of the One Below All's power. In an alternate future, it would actually take over Bruce Banner's body and use his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity, and eventually it would eradicate all life in the multiverse. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk storyline, but I'm telling you, go read this.
Number 10. Electro. Electro, even in his first appearance in issue 9 of the original Amazing Spider-Man series, was beating Spider-Man. At least, initially. When Spider-Man first meets Electro, he doesn't know what to do, and Electro gets away a few times before Spider-Man manages to stop him. At one point, Spider-Man even reaches out to try and grab Electro. Not a great idea. While Electro is in his electric shock condition, his words, not mine, it turns out touching him is deadly. Spider-Man survives the great electric shock he is given, but is forced to modify his costume in order to take on Electro in the future. He adds on rubber slippers and gloves, and likely in the future would make modifications to his costume, adding in rubber insulation in case he came up against the villain again, which he would many times. Because yeah, that's only issue 9. It goes on for a lot longer than issue 9. Number 9, Mephisto. Mephisto might not win in the most obvious ways, but he definitely is always sneakily on the up and up when it comes to him versus heroes. Any heroes really, Spider-Man included. In the case of Mephisto versus Spider-Man, that sounded more legal than I intended, but I guess we are dealing with binding contracts. Mephisto ended up helping Peter to get what he needed, but at a price. He required in exchange Peter's marriage to MJ, which for comic book continuity meant undoing that rocky but ongoing union. Spider-Man got what he wanted. Aunt May was safe and his identity was a secret once more, but I don't think he really realized what he was giving up until he experienced it. MJ didn't even seem to recall their marriage, although lately it seems to be implied that she might have known more about their past than she's let on. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you love it when I talk about villains, I love talking about villains, then be sure to show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here. I'm not just saying that. They don't just pay me to say that. This is the truth. Number 8, Chameleon. In his first appearance, Chameleon left Spider-Man running away in tears, ruining the day he ever became Spider-Man. Chameleon may have been apprehended in the end of issue number 1 of Amazing Spider-Man, but somehow it still felt as though he came out on top. Dang it, because Chameleon, you know, he's a villain, so he shouldn't win. Although I am kind of rooting for him sometimes. During their conflict, Chameleon attempted to make it seem as though Spider-Man was up to no good, impersonating him while committing acts of thievery and fleeing from the police. Oh no! Even once Spider-Man managed to catch him, it still seemed as though Chameleon might get away. Fortunately, Spider-Man had his spider sense to let him know something was up. He managed to get away from Chameleon, but it was only because Chameleon's disguise had become damaged in the fray that the villain was caught at all. So Spider-Man didn't even really win that day. It was more just like Chameleon made a mistake. And it was like, dang it. Now it's revealed who I am because you can see the Spider-Man suit underneath and I was impersonating Spider-Man. How embarrassing. Number 7, Birds of Prey. Never mind just beating Black Canary, at one point Harley Quinn manages to evade the entire Birds of Prey team, including Renee Montoya in the Black Label limited series, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. This comic gives us an alternate story for what would happen with their team up in comparison to the DCEU film. Instead of tracking down a diamond for Black Mask so that she can avoid him killing her, here Harley is aiming to take down her enemies in Gotham and ends up teaming up with the Birds of Prey to do so. But it turns out initially, neither they or the GCPD want Harley in Gotham, as she's a liability. After her brief team up with the Birds of Prey in issue number 1, she ends up captured by Renee Montoya, but gives her and the birds the slip in issue number 2, escaping custody with a secret ally by tunneling out of a restaurant bathroom. This iteration of the team includes Black Canary, Huntress, and Cassandra Cain, who we learn is actually filling in for Barbara Gordon, who's out with a broken leg. Also, if you saw the Birds of Prey film, and regardless of how you felt about it, this is a comic you should read. It's really funny, it's really great. I think it's really fun. Everything Black Label is usually pretty good. Usually. Number 6, the Lizard. While Lizard doesn't do anything crazy like succeed in completely killing Spider-Man or anything like that, he does beat him in the race against time to save his friend, Dr. Curt Connors, who, you know, is also the Lizard. In the story Shed, the Lizard ends up taking over before Spider-Man can get there to try and stop it. Spider-Man arrives far too late as the Lizard seems to have permanently gained dominance after devouring Curt Connors' son against his own will. This victory would be one that would not only haunt Spider-Man but the Doctor as well. He would end up finding a way to cure himself of his lizard brain but become stuck in his lizard form, kept in a containment cell for his crimes, but unable to bring himself to reveal Spider-Man that he had finally cured himself mentally of his reptilian half. This whole thing is just like a super big Lizard win in my mind, because even when Connors frees himself of the lizard, he's still stuck in the lizard form, and he still is like, I feel too guilty to even be able to tell people what's really going on. So the lizard like really won, even though he was gone.
Number 5. Onslaught. After Magneto used his powers to rip the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, Professor Xavier snapped and shut down the mind of Magneto. In the process of this, Xavier absorbed all the anger, grief, and lust for vengeance from Magneto's mind, which molded with every long suppressed negative feeling the professor had endured during the last 30 years. This resulted in a personality forming within Xavier, known as Onslaught, that would eventually separate to become a separate entity all on its own. Onslaught was incredibly powerful, and all the Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four could not take him. That's when Bruce Banner's Hulk said, "Hold my beer," and told Phoenix to turn off the Bruce personality inside his head. She did, and the Savage Hulk beat Onslaught so hard he destroyed his impenetrable armor, allowing Thor to land a massive blow and the heroes to take the win.
Number 4. KRAVEN. KRAVEN's Last Hunt is a story that forever sticks out in comic book history. Especially in Spider-Man's history, it is a dark tale where KRAVEN finally captures his most prized prey, Spider-Man. What's more, it's also implied he kills Spidey. He then proceeds to take Spider-Man's place, proving once and for all that not only is he capable of capturing and killing the hero, but also aiming to prove that he's better than Spider-Man by beating down all his villains brutally. In the end, we learn that Spider-Man was not actually dead, but in a comatose, death-like state all this while. He returns, and KRAVEN acknowledges that while he seemingly won to do what Spider-Man does while keeping to his moral code is actually an impressive feat. Something that KRAVEN likely wouldn't actually be able to do. His final hunt complete, it's then implied that KRAVEN takes his own life. Number 3. Wonder Woman. Harley's Little Black Book really is a treat of a mini team-up series. If you're a Harley fan and you haven't read this one yet, or at least dipped your toe in, I highly recommend it. Back in issue number 1 of the series, Harley manages to defeat Wonder Woman by catching her unawares and successfully kidnapping her. Of course, Harley actually is aiming to do this for Wonder Woman's own good, and is in fact a big fan of hers, as we find out. So it isn't a malicious defeat at all. Still though, using sleeping gas, Harley manages to incapacitate Wonder Woman and swaps clothes with her in an attempt to impersonate her. In the end, this results in a glorious team-up of the two badass ladies fighting side by side. Number 2. Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock actually succeeds in taking Spider-Man's place, not just by impersonating him, but by actually swapping bodies with the hero. That the two swap bodies, wah 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 wah, with Peter ending up stuck in the dying form of Doc Ock, and Doc Ock's mind now within the young and superpowered body of Spider-Man. Oh my goodness. Eventually, he would relinquish this form, giving it back to Peter when he realized he was incapable of making the tough decisions required of a more heroic spirit. But for a time, we'd come to know this version of villain and hero combined as Superior Spider-Man. And if you're wondering, but wait a minute, didn't Peter die in Doc Ock's body? Yes, but also his consciousness lived still on in his mind. It's a little confusing, but if you read it, it makes sense. It's like comic book confusing, just if you are explaining it quickly to someone in a list. Number 1. Green Goblin. You can take Peter's body, you can take his mind, you can ruin his reputation, but one of the worst things you can ever do to him is to break his heart. There are many ghosts that haunt Peter Parker, but one of the most meaningful ones to this day remains that of Gwen Stacy. Gwen was Peter's childhood sweetheart. Before he and MJ were together and were a thing, he was with Gwen, who was also a science enthusiast and academic like Peter. Gwen ended up being taken hostage by the Green Goblin and thrown from a bridge. When Peter as Spider-Man went to save her with his web shooters, it's implied that his own attempt to do so was what killed her. The tension from his web caused her neck to snap. Norman Osborn has remained one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains to this day, and for many, the moment Green Goblin killed Gwen Stacy was where this shift really happened for his character, making him Spider-Man's greatest and most feared nemesis. Number 10. Captain Carrot. These two fought it out in the two-parter Convergence Harley Quinn. After all, it would take a melding of multiversal realities in order for these two to even be able to fight one another, as Captain Carrot hails from the alternate Earth of Earth 26. While this fight might not seem like anything to celebrate, it should be noted that Captain Captain Carrot is actually pretty powerful. He possesses one of the most epic powers, I think, of all time, that of cartoon physics. I don't know about you, but being able to defy the law of physics that govern matter and molecules in our world sounds pretty powerful to me. While the physical kind of fight came to a stalemate, in the end it would appear as though Harley won without really meaning to when she offered Captain Carrot snacks from her friend Poison Ivy's garden. In other words, those carrots are probably all kinds of toxic. Although Harley also joined Captain Carrot in a quick snack, the poison would not actually affect her, as thanks to Ivy she has total immunity. Captain Carrot, however, looked like he wasn't doing great. He was like, ugh, poisonous garden. Number 9. Damian Wayne. Harley Quinn made quick work of Damian Wayne, aka Robin, in the Harley Quinn animated series. Here Harley was looking to make a name for herself as a supervillain and leader of her own criminal gang, striking out on her own. She wanted to take Joker's spot as Batman's top nemesis, and even managed to steal Batman's Batmobile in hopes of baiting him out. Unfortunately for Harley, it wasn't Bats who answered the call, but instead Bats Jr., aka Damian Wayne. Harley was very disappointed and refused to even really fight Damian, despite him claiming that he was a more than worthy nemesis for her, being trained by birth by the League of Assassins. Harley defeated him far too easily, hanging him by his cape on a meat hook in the warehouse that they were in. Although Damian of course later embellished the story and insisted that Harley and he were official nemeses. Also, I love Damian Wayne in the Harley Quinn animated series. I think it's my favorite incarnation of Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne fans, please don't hate me. I mean that with the utmost respect. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, more Harley lists, yes, let's have it happen, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also comment below with your favorite Harley issues or Harley stories. Number 8. Black Canary. Although Black Canary ultimately prevents the fight from coming to a close in the Injustice universe, Harley is definitely about to win when this happens, and would have been crowned victor. I mean, after all, she is mid-swing with her hammer just coming down almost on Black Canary's head there. However, Black Canary at the moment of her demise halts the fight as she's about to be sick to her stomach. Harley, recognizing Black Canary's morning sickness as a symptom of her being pregnant, decides to call the whole thing off, refusing to fight someone who is pregnant due to her own history. Although a moment ago Harley was ready to smash Black Canary's head in with her giant hammer, now the two women bond over their shared experience. It turns out that while Black Canary is pregnant with the now deceased Green Arrow's child, Harley was once pregnant and gave birth to the Joker's child in secret. Honestly, this is a really fun fight that also just turns into a really heartfelt moment, which is kind of great.
Number 7. Juggernaut. Cain Marko, the avatar of the god Sidorak. Cain is a Thor-level threat to the Marvel Universe, wielding the abilities granted to him by the Gem of Sidorak. Juggernaut has almost limitless super strength and stamina. He has a nearly invulnerable force field, he's immortal, and when he does somehow get damaged, he has a ridiculous healing factor. His main ability, however, is irresistible force embodiment, meaning once he begins to advance in a certain direction, it is virtually impossible to halt his movements. Guess who is one of the only characters to actually stop him? Thor! Yes, but shut up! Hulk! Hulk was one of them when he was War Hulk. Gosh, I gotta stop getting ahead of myself.
Number 6. Shazam. Another hero who Harley ends up taking on and surprisingly defeating an Injustice, we are talking about Shazam. I know, pretty impressive. Harley ends up fighting Shazam as both are on opposite sides of the superhero conflict, with Shazzy siding with Supes and Harl's allying herself with Batman. The two fight in year 5, but also fought previously in year 3, with Harley taking full advantage of Shazam's sweet naivete, tossing her hammer at him, which it turned out was actually a bomb. That time around, the hammer explodes in his face, knocking him out. Number 5. Mysterio. Mysterio recently got a pretty big win in the MCU, in typical Mysterio style, I must say. While he hasn't been doing too hot in the comics lately, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in Spider-Man Far From Home, Mysterio managed to earn Spider-Man's trust and even infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., making them believe he was a hero from an alternate world. I'm not going to lie, even I personally wanted to believe it. It turned out this was not true, and while his backstory was a little different here, Mysterio here was still a master at illusion and a full-on villain. In the end, Quentin Beck would seemingly die during a confrontation with Spider-Man, but it turns out he had one more trick up his sleeve. And at the end of the film, we see a video recording of Beck that incriminates Spider-Man and also reveals his true identity as Peter Parker. He's gonna be in a lot of trouble in the next movie, I think.
Number 4. Batman. Harley Quinn has beaten Batman on more than one occasion, but for me, one of her most iconic victory moments comes from the Batman animated series, when Harley successfully traps Batman for the Joker and is planning to basically waste him. Of course, although Harley almost successfully ends Bat's life, he manages to prey on her insecurities regarding her relationship with the Joker. He convinces Harley that the Joker will be upset with her if she just wastes him without contacting him or telling him anything about it. So she calls him up, and then when he arrives, it's revealed that Batman was actually right. In provoking a fight between the two villains, Batman is able to escape, but in this scenario, if Joker hadn't been involved, Harley would have likely been completely successful in executing her Puddin's plan. This victory not only proves Harley's might next to Joker, but also is a heartbreaking one, as it illustrates how harmful her relationship with the Joker is, and how its toxicity also succeeds in often holding her brilliance and her individualism hostage.
Number 3. Surtur. We mentioned the MCU in the last point, but I thought I'd go full force into it. In Thor Ragnarok, we get to see Hulk attack Surtur, the fire giant, as he is destroying Asgard with the Twilight Sword. It's actually really awesome. So he has fought Surtur, but how would that go in the comics? That's a good question. Well, we know that Surtur's main purpose is to beat Odin, so he is at least on Odin's level. You know who else is on Odin's level? Zeus. And Zeus and Hulk have had a bit of a scuffle once upon a time, which didn't go well for the Hulk. But then again, you take one of Hulk's more powerful forms like Worldbreaker Hulk or Heart of the Monster Hulk, and Hulk takes the win every time.
Number 2. Superman. We don't really know how, and she didn't do it alone, but in the Black Label limited series, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, in issue number 1, we open up on Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn being served by Superman. Together they seem to have made him their prisoner by threatening the life of Jimmy Olsen, and Superman is waiting on them in return for his whereabouts so that he can run off and save Jimmy. Of course, it all turns out that this is part of a dream, but it's a fun sequence and could actually be based on real events in this Black Label reality. Black Label comics typically happen outside of continuity, just FYI. Whether or not this was real though, Harley also took on Supes in a boxing match and won in Harley's Little Black Book in the second to last issue in issue 5. Number 1. The Trinity. If you thought the Man of Steel was too much for Harley Quinn to take on, obviously you would be wrong. And you'd actually be super wrong about that, as Harley has not only taken on Superman multiple times, but also in one fight managed to take on Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman all in one go. The holy trinity of DC supers, if you will. This all went down in Heroes in Crisis, when the superhero trio was trying to track Harley down as they believed she was behind the mass murder that went down at the Sanctuary. Harley made quick work of the team, using Batman's contingency plans even against his allies, and the team's love and affection for one another to her advantage.